In the previous clip, we were able to display why the average revenue curve is a proxy for the demand curve. It falls away at the same rate as the demand curve. And we saw how when you calculate marginal revenue, that the marginal revenue curve will slope away at twice the rate of the average revenue curve. Now, the classic diagram that we use for the theory of the firm is one that we pit both the average revenue and marginal revenue curve together with the average cost curve and your marginal cost curve. So I want to spend a few minutes going through the average cost and marginal cost and to display exactly why they're shaped the way they are, and hopefully you'll get a far greater understanding of this whole business once we look at this. What we see is that as output increases, the cost of producing through economies of scale, efficiencies are allowing the per unit, the cost of production, the average cost of production is falling because as you increase more, you're getting all these economies of scale of managerial and technical and purchasing and bulk and risk and so on and so forth. And it's costing the firm less and less to produce a unit as output rises, up until a point. At some stage, diseconomies of scale start impacting the firm, and it becomes more and more expensive to produce a product on average. Pitted against this AC curve, we have the marginal cost curve. Now remember, the marginal has to do with the cost of the last unit. This is the average cost of all the units, but we now look at what's the cost of the specific last unit. And we can see that the last unit, when economies of scale are kicking in, is falling very sharply. And as the last unit is falling quickly, it's pulling down the average cost, because the average is a combination of all the units produced. So every last one that's produced that's lower is pulling down the average. And you can see at a very steep gradient here, the average cost level is falling away at a very steep rate also. But at some stage, your marginal cost curves do start to encounter the diseconomies of scale. Not quite increasing charges yet, but they're falling away at a lesser and lesser rate. But you notice here, both of these are positive numbers. The marginal cost is beginning to rise at this stage here, but it's still beneath the average cost. So although you're falling away here, you're still producing, you're still beneath your average cost, so any firm should continue to produce as long as the cost of the last unit is less than the cost of the average unit. And what we see is that at some stage here, the marginal cost starts to rise very sharply as it hits diseconomies of scale, which hurts the last unit far more disproportionately than the other units. So what we see here is that it's a mathematical certainty that the marginal cost curve has to break the AC at the lowest point. Because as you can see, as the marginal cost curve begins to rise, this average cost, because it's still less than but it's less at a lower rate, so the slope of the average cost curve is getting less and less. It's almost completely horizontal at this stage, right at across. As soon as the marginal cost curve, the cost of producing the last unit, is above the average cost, then we start seeing the average cost curve starting to rise up, because it's now, here it was dragging the average cost curve down as long as it was cheaper. The moment the marginal cost curve becomes more expensive than the average cost, it starts pulling the average cost curve up. And once here we start getting a very steep gradient here, then the average cost curve starts pulling away very, very quickly. So hopefully that little presentation will just explain to you exactly why the marginal cost curve crosses through the average cost curve at the lowest point of the average cost curve. Okay?